The Catalyst, a CEP podcast on bold leadership in the Ocala Metro. Hosted by the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership. Sponsored by Douglas Law Firm. And recorded live at Wiley Productions Podcast Studios, located in Ocala, Florida. Welcome to The Catalyst. I'm your host, Natalie McComb, Vice President for the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership Foundation. And I'm joined today by Jeremiah Blocker, partner at Douglas Law Firm. Great to have you on the show, Jeremiah.
Oh, thanks for having me, Natalie. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Douglas Law Firm.
Yeah, so Douglas Law Firm, it was started in Palaca, Florida, about 10 years ago, and a couple of locals in Jacksonville and St. Augustine and Palaca. Charlie Douglas was the main kind of leader, and Charlie and I have been friends since college at UF about 20 years ago, and so he started the firm, and a couple of us have joined over the years, and we just really have tried to focus on being a hometown firm and kind of servicing the region.
Yeah, and how many offices do you have?
So we have 5 offices now. We have our main office in Palaca. We have one in St. Augustine, Jacksonville. Just opened an office in Flagler and also Ocala as well.
Wow, so a great reach, but I understand you were born and raised right here in Ocala. So tell me what it was like for you growing up.
Yeah, well, Ocala's great. So I'm a 6th generation Ocalian on both sides, and just really loved it. So grew up kind of in the southwest part of the county, but all my grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins were from here, and so just really enjoyed growing up here. Of course, Ocala was small then. It's growing quite a bit now, but it's really just home for me. So.
Yeah. And what do you remember most from growing up? Anything that you like to do? Anything that's changed since obviously you've been here as a young kid?
Yeah, absolutely. So my on my mom's side of the family, they were very involved. My great grandfather Carl Ray was involved in really developing Silver Spring. So we spent a lot of time going out there. Of course, you had Wild Waters at the time, and we spent a lot of time at Silver Springs and just enjoying everything out there. And I think that was an important part of my childhood, just appreciating kind of the natural beauty and going out to Lake Kerr and Lake Weir, spending time out there. But Marion County has so many great areas for kind of outdoor recreation, and just that's kind of the lasting memory that's stuck with me. So. And
certainly something that has not changed over time. As much as we've become developed, we still have so many opportunities for folks to enjoy the outdoors. And I know that, you mentioned being involved in the community, and that public service plays a big part in your family. I understand your father, uncle, and all 4 of your brothers have served as combat veterans. So what lessons were taught in your home growing up that led you to enlist yourself when the time came?
Well, I think just God and country, that was really important. There was certainly no expectation for any of us to join the military, but I think my parents really emphasized, for us growing up that, if you love this country and you care about it, you got to step up and serve. And so, after 9/11, I was a student at the University of Florida, and I went down, that happened on a Thursday. By the next week, I enlisted in the military, and later got to serve on active duty, and actually was a company commander in the reserves for the 351st MP Company here in Ocala. So it was great to come home and command that company over in Iraq and do a couple of deployments over there. So, but I think, just that foundation of, giving back to your community. And if you love this country, you got to, God finds different ways for us all to serve. But in our family, I guess we were good at soldiering, so that's what we did. So
yeah, and what a legacy, and obviously something that you all could share as a family. I'm sure some dinner table conversations were probably pretty interesting.
It's a big rivalry. It's a big rivalry for sure. Absolutely.
Have you served your family members? Have they served in different branches in the military, or have you all kind of followed the same path?
We have. So my oldest brother is a colonel in the Marine Corps. The next one is a colonel in the Army. My middle brother just retired from the Army as a field grade officer. Myself, I started out in the Army, went to law school, spent some time in the Air Force actually, then went back to the Army National Guard. So a little schizophrenic in my service. And my youngest brother is E7 in the Marine Corps. So.
Wow. So a whole bunch of experience in different levels. And I know that when you graduated with your bachelor's, you entered the Army as a 2nd lieutenant and served as an officer in Operation Iraqi Freedom. It's amazing to me the leadership that's required of new college grads, right, as they enter the service. What was that like, and what lessons did you learn during that experience that you really take with you today in your current role?
Well, it's, when you look back and think about it, the military provides some of the best leadership schools, how to deal with, problems and how to manage resources and people and how to do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there are always going to be challenges to that, but I think at a very young age, at 22, I was leading a platoon of, 40, 50 soldiers, and that was tough, because I was frankly one of the youngest guys there, but I had the responsibility of leading and doing that, and it's very intimidating. But I think relying on the wise men and women around you, there are a lot of non-commissioned officers that have a lot of experience, that some of them been in 15, 20 years, and I had a platoon sergeant that was outstanding, that really helped guide me. So even though I had the responsibility, the leadership responsibility, I had NCOs around that really help kind of guide that. And it's awesome responsibility. I think the
Mm-hmm.
military is such a leadership development school, if you will. But one of the things I've tried to take from that is, when you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with resources, is really trying to treat people the right way, focus on the mission. The military has a kind of a mindset of, soldiers first, mission always, right? Or,
Mm-hmm.
or the
Mm-hmm.
mission first, soldiers always. However, I've heard it phrased different ways over the years, but the point of that is we have a mission, we have to fulfill that mission, and you can apply that whether you're running a bakery or a law firm or a doctor's office. But you also got to take care of your people. You got to make sure
Mm-hmm.
they feel included. And it doesn't mean everyone's going to get along or there's not issues that develop with that, but you have to treat people the right way and also at the same time focus on your mission and be good at it. So,
Yeah, and there are certainly a lot of parallels with the corporate world. We always talk about people being aligned with the mission and knowing why you're there, right? And what's
of course.
your piece of that mission and making sure that, you don't lose touch of that, lose focus. That's wonderful. And I know that you've been recognized with numerous combat medals and commendations. Why was it important for you to continue to serve in the reserves even after you returned from active duty? Because I'm sure that was a big decision for you and your family.
Well, it is, and it's now I'm kind of on that 1 week in a month, a couple of weeks of the year, but it always ends up being more than that. But I think it's our country still has a lot of challenges globally, and right now we have conflicts in the Middle East. We have that we kind of got ourselves out of, and now we're in some ways getting pulled back into. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and I take seriously that for us to stay a free people and to protect our country, you have to have people step up and do it. Not every American can serve in the military. We're just not built that way. So, we need people to step up and do that. And even though my service is insignificant compared to the thousands of others that are serving, I'm part of a bigger mission. So I think as long as I'm able-bodied and able to do that, I want to do that. I want to set that legacy for my kids so they have that calling. Hopefully they'll find more engaging things to do than join the military, but at the same time, hopefully they'll see that we can continue to serve,
Mm-hmm.
as long as we can. So.
Hmm. And what does that look like? Help educate me a little bit more. In the reserves, what are the various things that they have you involved in, given your number of leadership experience too? Is it more kind of teaching and training the next generation, or what does that look like?
Sure. So for me, I had a combat arms background, and then I went to law school and became a
Hmm.
JAG officer, so a Judge Advocate General's officer. So for me in the National Guard, we have a lot of, we get called up for natural disasters, and so every time a hurricane season comes, we get called
And we
up.
get
But
none of those, so
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It's foreign to us here, but so we have, but the National Guard also is called on to support a lot of our missions globally. So, we had soldiers from the Florida National Guard in the Ukraine when they were invaded by Russia. We pulled them out, but they were
Mm-hmm.
training the Ukrainian military. We have soldiers in the Middle East right now. So, we have a lot of soldiers on the Southwest border mission.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of combat missions, a lot of humanitarian missions that the Guard steps up to. During Iraq and Afghanistan, the Florida Guard was all over the Middle East. We lost a lot of soldiers in both those conflicts. So, but for me, as a brigade legal advisor, I advise, a brigade commander and his staff on
Mm-hmm.
different legal challenges that come up, whether it's a court martial, whether it's just different discipline
Mm-hmm.
issues. So I've kind of, I kind of got hurt in the military, so I kind of transitioned from that to a little bit more of a the legal aspect of
Mm-hmm.
it. But there's a lot of domestic operations stuff, with the National Guard, our interplay with the civilian authorities, and so it's exciting to see that role, and we've seen a lot of that since the last presidential election, there's been a lot of kind of challenges that have come up with how the military is used and utilized to restore order and discipline, and so certainly a busy time for the military lawyers. So.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned JAG. What made you want to study law after being in the service? And because I know that was a decision you made, after having served for a number of years. So why law?
Well, I want to be a history professor, and my parents were like, "Well, look, I mean, that's you're not going to live at home anymore, right?" So, I think, I was interested in arguing, and always had high, strong opinions. So, went to law school and met my wife there, and we just both of our kind of legal careers took off. But I was a prosecutor for a number of years and got to prosecute a lot of criminal cases up in Jacksonville and also in Palaca as well. I worked there in that circuit, and definitely enjoy doing that. That's a tough job, though. It's tough handling some of those tough cases, and whether it's a attempted murder case or child abuse case, those are tough. It takes its toll, but I think doing that and serving that role, it's I enjoyed being able to use my talents to help people, and you can certainly do that as a lawyer. So.
Yeah, yeah, and you referenced, some of the areas that you practice in. I understand is civil, criminal litigation, real estate, and land use. And I know that no two cases are exactly the same, right? But you've developed, I'm sure, some areas of focus. What areas are those, or what type of cases are you most excited to take on?
Sure. Well, I love real estate law and I love equestrian law. I think they're fascinating, and being from Ocala, we have a lot of horses here and we have a lot of real estate. So I think that's just a fun area. And generally that's where people are, having fun and doing some fun stuff with real estate and equestrian law. Obviously I was a criminal prosecutor, so I'm good at that. It's not necessarily my passion area, but I've handled quite a few criminal cases on the military, and as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, a lot of trials. So I have a great trial record. But also, I was involved in politics for a while. Was a county commissioner in St. Johns County, so was chairman of the board there. So I'm a recovering politician, but land use law plays a role in that, and local government. So our firm represents a lot of local governments as well. Outside St. Johns County, and I enjoy that role because it's tough being an elected local official and making tough decisions and being in Publix and trying to buy milk with your kids and people saying, "Hey, why wasn't the trash picked up?" Or
Yep.
"Why is this road being approved here and not there? Why is the sidewalk on this side of the street, not the other?" And you have to be able to answer those questions and really be responsive to the voters. So,
Yeah, but what a great perspective you were able to gain, I'm sure, through that service, because being on the other side, right, then you could see what it was like when your elected officials are working with attorneys, right, and have
course.
attorneys maybe questioning, why something's going here or why you're changing the zoning. So I'm sure that kind of gave you a new appreciation for that too, and kind of widened your perspective on why some of those decisions are made as well.
It certainly does. It's humbling as well, and it helps you understand what people are going through and kind of their challenges as they work their way through the day-to-day stuff. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I speak for many when I say that I hope I never have to contact a lawyer.
Oh, for sure.
I'm sorry to my brother who practices law in St. Louis. But what do you want the public to understand when they consider, hey, do you need legal advice? Do I need to talk to a lawyer? What do you want them to kind of think about?
For sure. Well, the relationship's important. Being a lawyer is a trusted legal advisor, and whether it's something as simple as a real estate transaction or your spouse got a DUI. I mean, having that relates a trusted relationship. You have to really trust your legal advisor. You really want to make sure the relationship works. Just like your doctor, right? When you go to a doctor, it's impacting you. It's impacting your health. Lawyers, unfortunately, we're called in sometimes to fix problems that are really difficult for people, and to try to help them navigate a very complex situation. Other times it's more exciting. Hey, we're buying this, we're doing this, we want to develop this, but really having a trusted relationship is important, and really being able to trust the attorney and let them guide you is very important.
So obviously with multiple offices, I'm sure Douglas Law Firm is continuing to grow and obviously branch into new areas and get new clients. How does the team stay together? How would you describe the culture there that obviously keeps you all focused on your mission?
For sure. Well, I view the law firm really as family. It's tough practicing law in different law firms and different kind of that corporate, whether it's a big law firm or some of the different challenges that come with that. I love the the family-oriented culture there. You know, my wife knows all the wives of the other partners and attorneys and the secretaries, and we all get to know each other's family. So we really try to treat it as a family-oriented atmosphere. And, you know, I think that's so important. It's a stressful job, and you're dealing with clients that have a lot of stress in their life. So I think bringing as much of the family together and being into, you know, we all could work other places and work other jobs, and in some cases probably make more money, but, you know, we choose to work here. And really, you spend the majority of your time, you spend, you know, 5 days out of 7 with your work colleagues. And, you know, you want to be with people that are like-minded, that share the same value system, that, you know, are okay with you spending time with your kids when you need to, and taking that day off to spend time with your daughter or your son. So I like that atmosphere, and I like having that atmosphere, and I think it's important to foster that. So I love that about our firm.
Yeah, your work family, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you have to lead by example on that too, making sure you're taking time for your
Course.
family and yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we give our guests the opportunity to highlight a nonprofit that they're involved with or passionate about. I'm personally grateful to Douglas Law Firm's support as sponsor of this show, The Catalyst. But I'm sure that there's many organizations that, you know, benefit from the support of Douglas Law Firm, or that you know, may be involved with over the years. Is there one in particular you want to highlight today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the Veterans Council here in Marion County is outstanding, and I think the way they support our veteran community is so important. And not just, you know, the veterans that we see in parades on the 4th of July or Memorial Day. I mean, really just digging into you know, we have a lot of homeless veterans in our community. We have a lot of female veterans that, you know, again, you know, just as we've seen a transition over the last couple of decades with more women serving in the military, sometimes that's a forgotten class of veterans. And I think the Veterans Council here does an outstanding job, one, recognizing, but also developing tangible ways to support people. You know, a lot of times our veterans come out and, you know, they've kind of lost their place in the community. They spent 20 years, 30 years in the military. They don't know really how to fit in. So our Veterans Council here in Marion County does a great job. And you know, we're just proud to have a team there that knows how to serve our veteran community. So.
That's important. And you know, I think the other piece of it is when you look at, you know, the needs, as you mentioned, you have a lot of folks that, you know, when they leave from the military, they have had great leadership experience, right? They just may not know quite how to use it. And I know some of the services they provide is helping to connect veterans with employment opportunities, which is important because there's a lot that our veterans can bring to a variety of organizations.
Absolutely. And, you know, there are challenges too. You know, we're dealing with, for the last 20 years, we've spent, you know, a lot of young people overseas to Iraq and Afghanistan, our ongoing conflicts. There's a lot of PTSD and substance abuse issues that come with that. 'Cause, you know, we're exposing a whole generation of people to you know, warfare and conflict, and very similar to probably what our parents experienced in the Vietnam era. But, you know, we're set up a little differently today than probably our parents' generations were. So I think it's important to recognize that you have multi-generations of veterans that have had different experiences. People are way more supportive today than probably my dad was in Vietnam, but, you know, it's still important to show that appreciation and also the tangible ways to help. So.
And now a word from our sponsor.
Hello, I am Charlie Douglas with the Douglas Law Firm. We are a full-service law firm with many practice areas to serve your particular needs. The Douglas Law Firm is located in downtown Ocala at 110 North Magnolia Avenue. Give us a call today for a free consultation, or visit us at dhclawyers.com.
Well, now, Jeremiah, it's time for our lightning round questions to get to know you a little better. What's your favorite Ocala hotspot?
Well, we just love WEC. So my daughter, my oldest daughter is turning 8. She just loves the horses there. So we love going there and spending time there. So it's just such a great environment. It's so Ocala, right? So really enjoy it.
And what's the best part about living in Ocala?
Well, I think, you know, really just kind of going out and the recreation here. I mean, I love that, you know, you can go on the nature trails and go out to the lake and, you know, take the jet skis out. Just absolutely love that. And, you know, our family loves just experiencing Ocala. So especially being outdoors.
Yeah. Now, what's one thing that you wish Ocala had that it doesn't have yet?
Really Costco's, right? I think we're
Ditto.
looking for one.
Yeah,
right?
ditto. That's a question that our CEO, Kevin Sheely at the CEP, gets often, and he always has to answer, not sure.
Well,
Now,
we gotta get
we'd
one.
welcome them with open arms if they are listening to this. But I agree. Yes, the Costco would be great. And who is a leader that you admire?
I really liked President Reagan. I think just growing up in the 80s, I was born in 79, and most of my childhood, really, Reagan was our president. I remember being a young officer at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri when President Reagan, passed away, and just the emotion that, all the soldiers gathering together and just kind of mourning that, and just realizing so many of my colleagues, many of us joined the military because we were inspired by his leadership, and, certainly wasn't perfect, no politician is, but have always admired him and appreciated, in my childhood, he seemed to bring a sense of security and confidence and kind of hope, kind of the American dream, and it's morning in America again. So that's always resonated with me, the kind of the optimism. And again, not perfect. He had his flaws, but he's someone I've certainly looked up
Yeah,
to.
and who doesn't need that, right? A little bit of hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much. Again, we're here with Jeremiah Blocker, partner at Douglas Law Firm. Thank you so much for being on the show
Thank you,
today
Natalie.
with us.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Catalyst, hosted by the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership, sponsored by Douglas Law Firm, and recorded live at Wiley Productions Podcast Studios. New episodes, guests, and perspectives on leadership premiere twice a month. Follow us on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Have a suggestion for a future guest? Email us at thecatalyst@ocalacep.com.